გამარჯობა ბატონო პიტერ, რა არის USAID-ის მთავარი პრიორიტეტები საქართველოში?
So thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to see you, and I've heard so much about you and your team that I'm just really thrilled to be here. So USAID is the U.S. government's main development agency. Our ultimate goal here in Georgia is to help Georgia and Georgians become more self-reliant. What does that mean? It means that Georgia's government, civil society, and private sector ultimately should be able to plan, manage, and implement their own development solutions. And that means development in the sense of both economic governance and overall economic development, as well as broad democracy and governance goals, so that ultimately Georgia can become a fully functioning, prosperous, consolidated democracy.
Გვაინტერესებს ბოლო 10 წლის განმავლობაში რაოდენობის თანხა დაიხარჯა USAID-მა საქართველოში სხვადასხვა პროგრამების განსახორციელებად და რა მიგაჩნიათ USAID-ის მთავარ მიღწევად ჩვენს ქვეყანაში.
So I can answer the question about how much USAID has invested, which is only a fraction, by the way, of what the US government has invested. And we say since USAID started here, we've invested almost $2 billion here in Georgia. I think it's a lot more important to talk not so much about money, but to talk about the results that we've had with our assistance. We've built partnerships both with Georgia's citizens, Georgia's government, Georgia's private sector that have helped the country move forward towards Europe, helped sustain efficient health systems in the country back in the 90s and the early 2000s. We've helped the country recover from the aftermath of the 2008 war by rebuilding electrical and power infrastructure, helping people in need, many things there in the past. What we're interested in now is helping Georgia move to the next level closer to Europe to fulfill its Euro-Atlantic aspirations, to consolidate its democracy, and so we're reinforcing and expanding the investments that we've made in Georgia's democratic institutions, including civil society, including free media, but also working in partnership with the government to strengthen governing institutions. We're also dramatically expanding what we're doing on the economic growth sector, particularly focusing on working with the private sector, engaging the private sector. So we're proud of the results we've had in the past, but we're even more proud of what we think we can do together with the Georgian people in the future.
USAID წლების განმავლობაში მხარს უჭერს საქართველოში მედიის განვითარებას და თავისუფლებას. თუმცა დღეს ჩვენ ქვეყანაში გვაქვს პოლარიზებული ნაციონალური მედია და პატარა თავისუფლების კუნძულები ონლაინ მედიის და რეგიონული მედიის საშუალებების სახით, მაგრამ მე მინდა გკითხოთ აჭარის ტელევიზიაზე, საიდანაც ბოლო რამდენიმე თვის განმავლობაში ჯერ დირექტორი გაათავისუფლეს, მერე პროდიუსერები მოხსნეს, ბოლოს მთავარი საინფორმაციო გამოშვების წამყვანები მოხსნეს ეთერიდან. მინდა გკითხოთ, რისი გაკეთება შეუძლია USAID საქართველოში მედიის თავისუფლების მხარდასაჭერად და სიტყვის თავისუფლების დასაცავად?
Right. That's a great question. So the US government, not just USAID, believes that a free and independent media is an essential part of any democracy. So whether that's Georgia, whether that's the United States, it's a fundamental principle that a free media is essential to a healthy democracy. Here in Georgia, you're right, we have been supporting the development of independent media for many years, and we continue to do that today. We're watching with some concern what's happening in the Ajara broadcaster, or Ajara TV. In fact, representatives of Ajara TV were just in the US Embassy several days ago, meeting with members of our team and members of other parts of the embassy to talk about the situation. So we monitor what's happening in Georgia's broadcasting as well as other kinds of online media very closely. Practically speaking, in terms of what we can do to help, as you know, we're helping mainly with a focus on regional media here in Georgia. So we work on online portals, we work with radio in different parts of the country, including your own. We work with online investigative media outlets like Batumalebi and Batumi. So, and we find that we're trying to provide not just training and technical advice, but also provide some tools that can help regional media outlets become more successful and ultimately self-sustaining here. I'm very, very impressed by the ingenuity, the creativity, the dedication of outlets such as your own and such as many of the regional partners that we have here, regional media partners that we have. They're looking for and finding stories that matter to ordinary Georgians and to members of these communities. And so I think there's a hunger among communities for news that really is important at the community level. And so I think our assistance is actually helping to satisfy or meet those information needs in some way. And I think that's healthy.
რა პროგრამებს ახორციელებს USAID-ის საქართველოში მაღალმთიანი რეგიონების განვითარებისთვის, მთის განვითარებისთვის?
So we don't have one single program that is devoted to mountainous regions. We have a variety of programs that focus on specific, what we call sectors or issue areas. As you know, because you've been one of our partners, we are trying to promote and revive culture in mountainous areas as a way of promoting sustainable development in these rural parts of the country, and also help reinvigorate the fantastic culture in those areas through our civil society programs. We've also promoted internetification, as you know, because you were a big part of this program, of some mountainous areas in the country. Through economic growth programming, USAID supports increased access to the electricity grid or electrification, but through what we call off-grid activities in some mountainous areas, again, in partnership with the Georgian government. So we've looked at this from an energy perspective as well as a civil society perspective. We have a number of agricultural programs, as you mentioned, that are targeting areas in the high mountain regions of the country. Finally, we're trying to promote tourism through some civil society initiatives, but also through some of our major economic growth activities. Georgia, as you know, has so many wonderful areas that are remote, relatively difficult for tourists to get to, but once they're unlocked, I think have enormous potential if we can promote sustainable tourism that helps the economy grow, but also preserves the actual treasure that is Georgia's natural resources. So those are the main areas where we're working with mountainous areas.
USAID-ის ერთ-ერთი პოპულარული პროგრამაა ზრდა, რომელიც არ ხორციელდება ყველგან და მხოლოდ საქართველოს რამდენიმე რეგიონში მიმდინარეობს. გეგმავს რა USAID ამ პროგრამის არეალის გაფართოებას, რომ ამ პროგრამით უფრო მეტმა ადამიანმა ისარგებლოს ქვეყნის სხვადასხვა რეგიონში.
So that's a great question, and actually I would invite your feedback and also those of your listeners, because we are starting to think about how to, what, if anything, we should do to follow on to the Zrda program. The purpose of that program is to stimulate economic development in, as you noted, some of Georgia's most vulnerable populations. And communities, and those can include, for example, communities around the administrative boundary with South Ossetia, but also with the administrative boundary with Abkhazia. We also work in a number of other communities where there are sizable national minority segments of the population. So we're thinking about how we should build on the successes of Zrda, while still looking to preserve some of the essential flexibility and really, let's say, community level activities that makes Zrda very popular, as you note. So we're thinking about that inside the mission now. I welcome your feedback. We are brainstorming about possible ideas. Those could include things like, should we target simply one major region of Georgia? And do like rural development in, for example, only in Kakheti. That's as an example. We're also thinking about, should we expand some of the communities where Zrda works on a more sort of targeted basis according to certain types of criteria that we have. So we're thinking inside the mission, but I think one thing that we can say with commitment is that we will remain engaged in rural development in Georgia. It's an area of focus for USAID, and so one way or another, our programming will continue, but we're thinking about where we go next with the new program.
Mm-hmm. დიდი მადლობა ბატონო პიტერ ინტერვიუსთვის.
Thank you.
რომ ისეთი გააგრძელებს საქართველოს მხარდაჭერას.
Okay, thank you very much.
მადლობა თქვენ.